Nice job following that cue. Greetings, everyone. I'm Bergstein, and
I'm Susan Loynd.
They are all primed and ready to go. Welcome to the fifth annual Mad River Story Slam. An evening of good old-fashioned storytelling. I just wanted to give you a little bit. You really can't see anyone.
No, you don't.
I didn't believe them.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Are you all drinking? What's happening?
Just ask if they have clothes on. So this all started, about 5 years ago, since this is the fifth annual. I was having a conversation with a woman named Jessica Tompkins, who is moving back to the Valley soon, and she was working for what was then known as the Mad River Valley Food Shelf, and she wanted to do a fundraiser of some sort. And we were in the midst of planning this, and then COVID hit. So we did it anyway. We did it online, and that was kind of cool because we have storytellers from all over, and we did, and it was successful. And then we kept it going, and this is our largest crowd yet. So this year's theme, in case you didn't see any of the advertising or look at the program or had your head in the sand, it's about relationships. And that really opened the door to a very wide canvas of potential stories. And I think we've hit the gamut, I think, with tonight's group. And so the other thing I wanted to say, that if you've ever been to a moth, they pick their storytellers from the audience. You sign up when you come in, but these folks have been with us for about a month now, and we've been working, and Susan's going to tell us a little bit about that.
Nice thing. Yeah, so telling stories is such an important part of our humanity, being human. And it really allows us to create this intimate connection with other people. I was talking to somebody backstage. There's an incredible vulnerability in telling a story that's deeply personal to you. And also, when you get that laugh and you have that human connection, it's just, it can be cathartic, but also just like a shot of adrenaline. So preparing for this involves really coming up with a first-person story, except we have one exception. There's always exceptions, right? But even in that exception, I hope you're willing to suspend your disbelief. The story is about a couple and this person's relationship to them. So we're allowing that in, aren't we, Doug?
Oh, yeah.
Because we're not quite. You said that you were talking about, the moth, and I was like, this is not the moth, but it's close. It's moth adjacent, as my daughter would say, moth adjacent. So we look for stories that broadly fit the theme, and then you write it up and you read your story, as Doug says, aloud to anyone who will listen. I love that. And then you want people to give you feedback, and you have to have this willingness. This was our mantra when we did the workshops. You have to be willing to kill your darlings, right? And anybody that's a writer or a poet knows this to be true. You have to be willing to cut out some of the superfluous details that don't further the story. So you need enough detail that people are engaged, but not so much that you lose them, right? It also has to fall within 5 to 7 minutes or so. And all the while you're doing that, you're trying to figure out what is the setup, what's my desire, what's the setback, what's the climax, how did this all resolve? All of which is to say it's not easy. And sharing stories takes a lot of courage. And we say this at Cabin Fever. These are your brave friends and neighbors who are willing to share a piece of themselves tonight with you. So let's give it up for these folks.
My next bit was going to be to have you practice, but I think you've got it. That was excellent. So we did ask, as part of their introduction, we asked all the participants to respond to this question. What relationship has brought you the most laughs? And we're going to share those in the introductions. We also asked you and I've got 2 in my pocket. Only 2, but you have another chance to.
People.
I know, so I'm going to give you another chance in intermission.
But they can't see.
That's right.
We'd be judging them.
So the question that we ask you, should you choose to think about this and put it on paper, what's a relationship that got you in trouble? Or vice versa, a relationship that you got someone else in trouble. So think about that, and there's paper out where the refreshments are going to be, and you are welcome to fill that out at intermission and slip it to me on the slide. Okay, bathrooms are out front, fully stocked with toilet paper. Thank you over here. Emergency exits here and here, back to the bathrooms. It gets really crowded at intermission. We have some in the back. Just come on backstage, we'll help you out. Phones. I like what Mickey did during our last show. She gave a demonstration, took the phone out. I don't actually know how to put this in. I'm pretending to put it on silent right now. Oh, I did it! So everyone, if I can do it, you can do it. Okay, so here we go. Ready to go? I think the introduction is yours, so I'm going to just...
Ready, yes.
I'm going to flip this over and walk away.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
People. Our first story is A First Date by Sarah McDougal of Warren. Sarah's a Valley Players veteran who's finding her way back to the stage after a bit of a hiatus. For the relationship with the most laughs, her response was her circle of high school theater friends because they were such clowns. Please welcome to the stage, Sarah McDougal.
You guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep. Hi. Hi. So, in the summer of 1971, my mother had just moved to Rochester, New York, a new city for her, and she was working as a nurse in a hospital, and she wanted to meet more people and make more friends. So she and another fellow nurse of hers decided they were going to join a ski club. And the ski club they joined was called the Friskies. Because of course it was. And so she went to their first event, and this being the summer, they were having mostly parties and social events. And again, this was 1971, and they were doing a mock fashion show. And my dad was performing in said mock fashion show, wearing all of the mismatched things he could find. So polka dots and plaid and stripes and paisley, and he did a pratfall at the end of their little runway that they had made for their fake fashion show, and my mom thinks to herself, who is this jerk? So a couple of events later, my dad asked my mom out, would you like to go for dinner? And my mom's like, yeah, okay, sure, fine. Free dinner, sure. And so he goes to her apartment to pick her up, and he notices that she has a guitar. And he says, oh, you play? She said, yeah, I play a little. He's like, will you play something for me? So she played him something, and then he's like, can I play something for you? She's like, yeah, sure. So he played, and he was a really good guitarist, and so they were in, this was the good part of the date, I should preface. So things are going great. They go to, the plan was they were going to have dinner at a place called the Canisius Inn, which is on Canisius Lake, which is one of the Finger Lakes, for those of you who know Western Central New York. And what my mom didn't know was that this was a hangout for the ski club. And so while my parents were having dinner, all of the friends at the ski club were hanging out at the bar. Oh, God. Sending notes to the table and heckling them and otherwise just being jerks about the whole thing. And my mom is sitting there going, oh no, what have I done? And at the end of the dinner, one of the guys, John, comes over and says, hey, we've got the boat. You want to go out on the boat on the lake? And my dad says, oh, that would be a great idea. And my mom's thinking, this is not a good idea. This is not a good idea. But they go out on the, she doesn't want to, be a spoil sport. So they go out on the lake, and they're out on the lake, and they run out of gas. Oh. And again, this is 1971, so no cell phones. They did have a CB radio, so they found someone who was awake and who could bring them gas out into the middle of Canisius Lake. So by the time my dad brought my mom back to her apartment, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. And he had to be, so where they lived, Rochester's not a very big place, but she lived on one side of the city, and he lived on the other side of the city. So it was about a 40-minute drive between those two places. And he had to be on her side of the city for a meeting in the morning for some other thing that he was doing at like 9 in the morning. And so he said, you know, it's so late, I have to be on over here in the morning. Would you mind if I just slept on your couch? And she said, no, and shut the door on him, and then said, well, I'm not going to see him again. And obviously these are my parents, so 2 weeks later, he calls her again and says, hey, would you like to go out to dinner again? And she's like, oh, glutton for punishment, okay, sure, fine. And so they go out to dinner, but not to the Canisius Inn, and not to a place that was a hangout for the Friskies. And they had a lovely time. Thankfully for me, I wouldn't be here. And that's my mom's side of the story. Unfortunately, this is where it gets a little more serious. I don't know my dad's side of the story because my dad passed away. He was killed in a car crash when I was 1. So, and that's it. It's sad to bring that up, but it's an old scar for me. Like it's something that I've lived with most of my life. So, but the reason I like telling the story, I think it's a fun story, but it's also, this is how I know my dad, is through these stories. Stories that my mom told me, stories that my uncle told me, my cousins, the guys from the ski club. Right, so I know my dad through these stories. And I feel like this is the power of storytelling. This is the power of memory, of keeping these things alive. So, thank you for letting me share.
Chicken fat. That's our next story, Shevonne Travers. I don't know if you saw Keep Up Good Courage, but the place was packed for that all weekend. Sometime this winter, I can't remember the date. But anyway, she was instrumental in making that happen. So she's got many claims to fame. Her relationship with the most laughs, for 8 years, she's had a rescue dog named Robbie, who looks like a golden doodle, but in reality, not even close. Whenever anyone came into the home and took their shoes off, anyone, Robbie would immediately put one of the person's shoes in their mouth like a pacifier and carry it around. Like Linus' shoes gave him confidence, but he looked ridiculous. Shevonne wants you to know that she's got several more untold stories in her brain waiting for their chance to take the stage. So I guess we have to have a 10th and a 15th. So we'll get this going. So here's one of those stories. Come on, Shevonne.
Okay. So, this story is about my relationship with a vinyl 45 record. Now, not just any record, but a very unusual record. And it began in my 7th grade PE class, where our PE teacher brought in a record player and carried with her this 45. And she said to all of we young ladies in our royal blue onesie gym suits, okay, when I put this record on, you need to follow what the directions are and perform. So the record she put on was, "Go, you chicken fat, go." And there may be some people in the audience that also had to do this, because I can tell you that this was President Kennedy's way of one of the ways of getting youth to be more fit. And he sent this 45 to every school across the country with the idea that they would put it on the PA system every morning, and then we all would do this. So, this record, the lyrics were written by the woman who wrote the lyrics for The Music Man. And then Robert Preston is the one singing "Go, you chicken fat, go," which probably today is not very politically correct. Anyway, it starts with 10 push-ups, and then you do sit-ups, and then you do bicycles, and then you march, and you do touchdowns. And it was absolutely hilarious. We loved it. And for the rest of the time I was in junior high and high school, there was always a unit every year on Go You Chicken Fat Go. Fast forward, 4 years later, I'm in my senior year of college, and Go You Chicken Fat Go is history. No memory of that. I'm looking for an easy A. So are other people. And I see this course listing, PE games for elementary teachers. That sounds like an easy A. So I sign up for the class, go to the class. It's a very serious and somewhat scary to me professor, along with the whole WVU football team. And every time class happens, we play games. And then one day, the professor brings in a record player and a 45. And I couldn't believe it. There it was, Go You Chicken Fat Go, all over again. And this time, we had to perform, and I was doing it with the WVU football team. All right, so I was also teaching a fitness group at a local nursing home. So I got up the courage and asked the professor if I could borrow that 45. And he said, sure. I told him why. And he said, just remember, it's my only copy, and I promised to guard it with my life. Walked out of the class with the 45, got into my vehicle, threw it on the dashboard, drove to my apartment. I forgot about it for 2 days. And when I remembered to retrieve it, it no longer looked like a record I could play. The sun had cooked it. And I didn't know that the sun could cook something on my dashboard that good. I do now. So it looked like that now. The record was all full of waves. I didn't know what I could do. There was no Google, no internet. I began asking friends and a few people I didn't really know on the street what I might do to get this record back together. So one of the ideas that I took hold of first was to hold it with a pair of tongs over an open flame on my stove. I tried to cook it some to meld it back together. That didn't work. Then this person who I considered brilliant, this budding engineering student, gave me this idea that I thought, oh, that must work. So he told me to put it in a frying pan with oil, cooking oil, and then cook it for a few minutes, pull it out with the tongs, put it on a towel, cover the other side of the towel on an ironing board, and then steam it with the iron. That didn't work either. And at this point, my roommate was watching this catastrophe, and she said, you're doing this all wrong. You need to bake it. I'm a cook, and you need to bake this 45. So she gets out a cookie sheet, she throws the 45 on it, puts it in the oven, I don't know how many minutes that was, pulls it back out, and she says, all right, now we're gonna flatten it. And she throws this dictionary on top of it. It didn't really flatten it, but it did break it. It broke a piece of it off. So now I really can't get it fixed. And then, there must be a record, there must be another record of Go You Chicken Fat Go somewhere. There were record stores back then in my college town. I went to all 3 of them. They looked at me and said, we don't have that record. Then I broadened my search. I called up record stores in Pittsburgh. I called 4 or 5 of them. They all said to me, we don't have that record. How was I going to go back to class? I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I was a mess. I was going to have to drop that class or get an F. the last person I talked to said, you know, that record's out of print. Now what? Well, about a day later, I thought, I'm gonna go to the local college library and tell them my story, which I did, and a librarian directed me to the Yellow Pages for LA and Hollywood. And in the Yellow Pages I found, under Capitol Records, I also found this company that specialized in out-of-print records. So I jotted down the number, I went home, I dialed the number, I got a person on the line, I asked whether they had Go You Chicken Fat Go. And she said, well, just a few minutes, let me look at the catalog. And she came back on and she said, yes, we do. And I was so thrilled. How do I get a copy of this? She said, write a check for $15, send it to us, and when it clears, it'll be in your hands. About 10 days later, it was in my hands, packaged at the mailbox. Opened it up, looked at that record, looked at my Warp record. They were almost the same, but the label in the middle was a little different. And I decided, he's never gonna notice that. Next day I went to class and I handed him the record. He said, how did it go with the nursing home residents? Oh, they loved it, we had so much fun. Of course I never played that record for the nursing home. I was lying through my teeth. And I thought, what, for all the consternation I went through to get this back to him, he didn't really get it. You know, oh, you had a good time? Oh. Now, 49 years, I've held on to my copy of Go You Chicken Fat Go. And it's gone with me across the country and back, whatever apartment or home I lived in, it's been with me. Whatever marriage, to all my children, my grandchildren, and most of the time, I've nailed it on the wall, wherever I live. Now, it reminds me of how naive and ridiculous I can be, and as well, it reminds me that I've got the wherewithal to solve a problem that seems unsolvable. Thank you.
Love that. Go you chicken fat go. All right, so I got one of these that somebody filled out, and I'm dying to know who said this, so see me later. What's a relationship that got you in trouble? Falling in love with someone while engaged to someone else. Oh. That's a story for a future show, people. Next up, we have Sinful Brownies for Love by Charlotte Robinson of Warren. Her relationship with the most laughs, she says, her friendship with Jeannie Marie Nicholas. They always have fabulous adventures, and even when the shit is hitting the proverbial fan of life, they can find humor and lighten the mood while giving each other great, or at least fun, advice, even if it may not always be the best idea. Please welcome Charlotte.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't even need a mic, I have a big mouth. When I was a kid, my favorite place to be was at my grandparents' farm. I was an oops, and my parents had a shotgun wedding so that my mother's parents wouldn't disown her. They were upper middle class Lutheran family. They had high hopes for their 2 children. And my father was a bad boy who dropped out of high school, had a drug issue, but all the girls loved him. So we lived with my grandparents for 2 years, and then my parents divorced when I was probably 3 and a half, and I could only go to my grandparents' house And they loved having me there because I was the only grandchild and stayed the only grandchild for 11 years. So once my parents divorced, I could only go there every other weekend because my dad's custody agreement said so. He had to have supervised visits, so it was great. He would drop me off and I would stay there. So when I was at my grandparents' house, my grandmother spent a lot of time with me. My grandfather worked a lot, and she was always willing to do whatever I wanted to do. I loved sports. She would play football in the yard with me for hours, baseball. When I got older and I was a teenager, the malls were really big. We'd go to the mall. She would sit and people watch all day long and never say, "Come on, let's go." She just would let me hang. Then when I was an older teenager, I was an only child, I got bored. She always let me bring a friend. So one time my friend Tracy and I wanted to build a fort. Of course, my grandmother said yes. She and my grandfather were all in. Every other weekend we'd go, gather supplies, build. So in the fall, the first fall day, we were going to go get some pallets and put the finishing touch on the fort. Well, I stepped on a yellow jacket's nest. I had on bell bottoms, it was the 70s. They went up my pants, down my baggy shirt. I'm flailing and screaming and crying. When we finally get to safety, everybody's booking it out of there. Finally get to safety, I'm screaming still. My grandmother says, "Well, I didn't know you could dance like that." And we all started cracking up. So then, when I was probably 14 maybe, she bought me a VW Bug convertible. I mean, maybe she bought it for herself, but we would go to the mountains, get boiled peanuts. Sometimes we'd just go to the beach for the weekend. And I might have been younger than that because I was watching the Dukes of Hazzard. But my friends and I would get in that car, convertible. We'd jump over the door like the Dukes of Hazzard jumped through the window. We'd go yeehaw and all over the countryside. On the farm, the back roads, they just let us do whatever we wanted. We would jump ditches, and it was just so much fun. And then when I was 16, my mother kicked me out, so I got to live with them forever. I mean, till I moved out. But, excuse me. For the past 2 years, my grandmother lived with us, and I got to be fortunate enough to give her the same love that she gave me growing up. And she passed March 4th, and I've been going through pictures and thinking about memories. She came up for all of my kids' births. She was able to see them all get married. She was 98 and had 5 generations of love right around her. But in going through all these memories, my favorite memory is when my dad was incarcerated for a long stint, about 15 years, and she would go visit him 3 hours away, 3 hours there, 3 hours back, every Saturday. Wow. And he got in trouble for growing and selling weed. So one time, she told my grandfather, who always went with her, she didn't want him to go. And my father told me this story, and I never really believed it, because my grandmother was very religious and very much a rule follower. But I found her journal in some of my books years later, and I found it's true. So she started baking the guards and my father treats, and she would take them every Saturday. So this one week that she told my grandfather not to go, she made some pink pie, which is an old family classic at our house, for the guards, and she baked a pan of brownies for my father. She cut a hole in the bottom of those brownies and put a cell phone in them. And then she replaced the piece that she took out on the bottom, and she waltzed into that jail where all these guards loved this sweet, devoted mother. She gave the guards the pink pie, my father his brownies, and that was that. So when my father was in jail for 15 years, well, before he went to jail, we went on a visit to Hawaii. He took my family, my 3 small children, our babysitter, and all of my husband. We went from Molokai to Maui, and he had morphine pills and pot marijuana that he went to sell on the island. And I told him then, if you get pinched again, I'll never come see you in jail, and I'll never bring my kids. So I meant it. So I never went. But one day, I get a phone call. Not the, hello, this is a such and such correctional facility with a collect call. No, I get a call from my dad. He's got headphones on. He's in his orange jumpsuit. I said, Daddy, how do you, oh, Mother snuck me in a cell phone. That's when he told me the story. So I think he's full of shit, but he wasn't. So anyway, he's given me a FaceTime tour of his, oh, he was the gardener. He was in charge of the garden. That was his job. He was in the Bishopville the Lee Correctional Center in Bishopville, South Carolina, which was right next to a topiary making plant and garden. So he's giving me a tour, and he had a green thumb. Excuse me. So he's giving me this tour of the facility, of his garden shed. He's got a microwave, a coffee maker, you know, a chair. It's awesome. Then he's giving me a tour of the outside where he's got, so the building blocks one place, then he's got a row of shrubs that he's meticulously manicured, and then he's got garden Disney topiary forms with beans and flowers growing up them. So 3 sides are enclosed. I said, Daddy, where the hell did you get those topiary forms? And he says, oh, the plant just throws them over the gate when they don't want them if they're damaged. So I asked the prison if I could put them up and grow some beans. So I'm blessed because I've got 3 sides totally closed in. They don't have any idea what I'm doing. So we hang up. Another phone call where he called me way too much. So I said, Daddy, aren't you worried that, you know, what if that phone rings in the clink? Aren't you going to get in trouble? And he said, no, darling, I never take it in. We can have iPods, so I've got my earbuds on. They think I'm out here rocking out. But no, I would never take the phone inside, darling. He says, I got a hole under that goofy topiary over there. And he turns the phone and shows it to me. And I got a chock full of nuts can. I put the phone in every night, bury it under Goofy, cover it up, go back to the cell. I said, wow, that's actually a good plan. So anyway, the first time he called me, I took a picture, a screenshot of him in his orange jumpsuit with his headphones on. And every time he calls me to this day, that's the picture that comes up on my iPhone from the first time he ever called me. Thank you.
Our next storyteller, Sue Richardson of Beverly, Mass. Here's a title for you. Sucking Seed, a hate-love relationship with an inanimate object. Curious?
Yes. Yeah.
So Sue, although she hasn't lived in the Valley since the early 80s, where you, if those of you who are here, might have seen her at the Wunderbar, Chez Henri, or D.W. Pearls, or all 3 at once. She always has called the Mad River Valley her heaven on earth. Her relationship that gives her the most laughs. I don't know where he is. That guy right there, Tommy. Her husband, Tom, brings her the most laughs. He is animated, makes the best sound effects, and can make her laugh even under the most difficult situations. Sounds like we should get Tom up here. Maybe during intermission, Tom. His antics have rubbed off on our kids and grandkids, and if you have a conversation with him and he comes up with one of his sound effects, just say, how'd you do that? And he will repeat it exactly. All right, on to the story. Come on out, Sue. Yeah, there's no people there.
Okay, I'm sure you have all think of one person who made the greatest impact in your life, a teacher. Were they funny, smart, kind, any of these? Anyways, the person that made the greatest impact on my life was my first grade teacher. She had none of these qualities at all. She was just matronly and stubby and just nothing kind about her. Anyways, I was sitting in my first grade class, 3 rows back, and she had handed out this paper for us to do, this worksheet, and it was a multiple choice. We had to match the animal with the verb. So I'm finished with my work, and I'm all proud of my work that I'm doing, first grade, I'm so proud. And I can feel her come up over me like this cloud. I'm like, oh no, here she comes. She rips the paper out from underneath my tiny folded hands and starts going, "What are you, stupid? Birds don't hop, they fly!" And I was devastated. I was ruined. I couldn't breathe. The rest of my class was just, and looked at in horror. And I was in shock. Like I said, I couldn't breathe. Tears pouring out of my eyes. The desk was soaking wet. She runs me out of the classroom, takes me to the office. The school secretary was like, what to do with her? Runs me over to the school nurse, and she's like, oh my God, call her mother. My mom comes, takes me out of school, and brings me bird watching the rest of the day. But you know what? She ruined me. I didn't want to learn. I gave up on learning. I was not excited about school anymore. And I had lots of older siblings that really encouraged me to go to school and all this stuff, but this woman, she broke me, snapped me like a twig. And I struggled all the way through grammar school, and it was a K through 8 school. When I got to 6th and 7th grade, they told my mom, she's probably, if she can't make it in the first quarter of the next semester next year, we're gonna put her back a year. So for 2 years they told me this. It was like, oh great, thanks for your confidence. Like, you should do that. Anyways, it was time for me to go to high school, and I begged my mom, please mom, can I please go to Essex Aggie? This is a non-traditional high school, go work out in the fields and learn all kinds of agricultural stuff. I wanted to be a park ranger. Sounds like a good idea, right? Well, my mom said, no, you're gonna go to a traditional school, go to Salem High School, and you're gonna be fine. I get up there, and instead of going to traditional high school, they, of course, figured I was stupid, right? I wasn't doing well all the way through grammar school, so they put me in a distributive education, where I was placed in this construction trailer right outside the cafeteria with 10 other students. So everybody could see the stupid kids going in and out. And I was just like, yeah, great, Just more discouragement, right? Never encouraging me to learn. I never read the classics. I never learned algebra. I never got to look into a magnifying glass. A microscope. And it was really hard. But then I started, like, in this small group of kids, I started to feel more confident. I wanted to get more challenging work. So next thing I know, I'm doing pretty good in school, considering the least amount of work that we were doing. At least I was feeling good about myself. And I told my mom, I really want to go to college. And she said, I really don't think you have it in you. So if you want to go to college, you're going to have to pay for yourself. So I applied and went to Bay State Junior College in Boston, and I was doing great, it was just my associate's degree, and it was in my very last semester, I ended up getting, my wisdom teeth came in impacted, and then I got mono. Oh. And I missed weeks and weeks and weeks of school. I'm like, oh crap. And it was time for graduation, and the dean said, you can still walk at graduation, but you're not gonna have a diploma yet until you finish up these credits that you missed. Like, okay, so I wanted all the pomp and circumstance of all the graduation, so I went, and my mom came, a few sisters came. Nothing big. It wasn't no big celebration or anything like that, which was whatever. So anyways, at the end of the graduation, my mom says, let me see your diploma, and she opened it up and saw it was empty, and she said, I told you so. Oh. And I was devastated. It was like, oh my God, screw this, I hate school, I'm stupid, no one believes in me, right? So, fast forward 20 years, I decided I wanted to, my parents had passed away, and I had a small family that were bringing up, my husband and my 2 kids, And I decided I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to, like, let's see if I can give this a try. So I went to my local college, Endicott College, beautiful college in Beverly. And they said, yeah, we can totally accept all these credits from Bay State, and we think you should continue on for your bachelor's degree. You know, encouraging me to try hard. We got great professors here, they'll help you out, whatever. So I was doing really well, and doing so well, one of my professors suggested I apply for the President's Award. And here I am working all days as a waitress and going to school at night. So I was a non-traditional student. And I'm like, I don't even know what the President's Award is. I'm like, all right, I'll apply anyways. And I ended up winning it. I couldn't believe it. And I graduated with my bachelor's degree, summa cum laude. I'm like, oh my God, this is really pretty cool, right? Yay! So I got a job right after that working as a paraprofessional at the middle school in Beverly. And I'm in this classroom, and this teacher's walking around. It was a math class of all things, my worst subject. And I felt comfortable because I'm like just taking notes for these kids. I felt like these kids are me. This is me in school. So I felt really comfortable working with these kids. Well, this one kid, he's sitting next to the teacher, and he's disheveled and one, typical kid that would be bullied by a teacher. He wasn't well kept. So she's working with him. All of a sudden, she stands up in front of the whole class and says, "What's the matter, Tommy? Didn't you take your meds today?" And I was livid. I was right back to that first grade. I wanted to crawl into my desk. I'm sure Tommy did too. I'm like, that's it. I went flying home that night. I said, Tom, I'm going back to school. I can be a teacher. I can be a better teacher than this woman. And I did. I went back and I went to Endicott, and I got my, worked on getting my master's degree in special education. And I got through all of that, right? Got through all my work, and they said, oh, you got one more hurdle, Sue. I'm like, what's that? They said, you have to take a 4-hour multiple choice test to pass the licensure test before you get your degree. I'm like, kind of kidding. 4 hours. I couldn't take it in first grade. You want me to do it now for 4 hours? Come on. But, so I took it, failed it. I'm like, oh my God. Missed it by two points, right? And I took it again and again and again. Of course, my graduate students, they all graduated without me. Everything's like, oh, well, whatever. But my kids were like, don't give up, Mom. Come on, keep going. You're going to get this. Keep going. You're going to be a teacher. So I did, and I finally got it, and I graduated, got my diploma. And it was at learning through the special education, I learned how to learn. And I really got excited about education. I'm like, I get it now. I understand. Like, I think differently than these people, and they think differently than me, and da-da-da. There's all kinds of different ways of teaching, and I knew I could do this, right? So now I'm addicted to education. And I decided, I'm going to go back and get another master's degree. And I went and I got my master's in to become a reading specialist. Only, again, guess what? Now the Amcees test. Like, great. I took it 8 times. And I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. It cost me a fortune. But I'm like, I know I'm gonna be a really good teacher because I'm so dedicated to my own learning. It's got to rub off on the others, right? So anyways, I ended up getting my 3rd master's in arts and education because I just love art. And it just made sense to me to do that all together. So now I'm retired. I taught for 20 years, retired special ed teacher. I have many students that I told this story to and encouraged them to keep on going. Don't give up. Don't let people tell you what to do. Just be a good self-advocate. Tell them what you need. And these kids have gone on to be teachers themselves. So, I guess the moral of the story, if at first you don't succeed, to quote Curly Howard, keep on sucking till you do succeed.
I want Sue to be my teacher. How cool was that? Awesome. Next, we have a story, it's right up my alley, called Busted by Larry Gill of Waitsfield. So far, Larry has only made appearances on this stage telling stories, but we're hoping with some arm twisting we'll get him up here for other performances. For the relationship with the most laughs, he said, the relationship that has brought him the most laughs is the one he's getting ready to tell you about. Please welcome Larry.
That'll be fine, I think. Here. Move it higher. My first wife, Susan, and I really could have been much different than we were. She was an only child from New York City and a feisty, political Jewish woman. I was raised in a big country home in Western Massachusetts, and I had 5 siblings. I didn't really care very much about, politics of the day or current events, and Susan was very, very into that sort of thing. Even though we were so different, we had this common ground that really was the basis of our marriage. We had both been raised in families that had been kind of compromised. I don't know how to say it any better, but and I think that one of the things that happens to you when you get raised in a family like that is that we were both filled and really motivated to want to have a family that was happy and healthy and a really close-knit unit. And we did accomplish that together, as different as we were. Susan brought, like I said, a lot of her awareness of political events and the news of the day and current events into my world, and therefore our family's world. And one of the traditions that she started was she had the New York Times delivered to our house every Sunday, and we would kind of go through it together. We would, eat breakfast together and hang out and read the New York Times. And we went to New York City pretty regularly, and it was fun to see what shows were on in the city. She struggled over the New York Times crossword puzzle every week. And it was a nice family tradition. I had grown up doing my main motivation really in life up to that point, and still is really, is I just love to get out into the wilderness, as far as I can, away from anything that's been built by man or, just civilization of any sort. And so I did a lot of sea kayaking and mountain biking, and I rode my bicycle cross country. I went to Alaska. I lived up there for quite a while. And Susan just thought, why would anybody go camping? Like, what is the point of that? And not to mention, doing stuff like camping, but, a lot of the activities that I did were considered to be pretty high risk. Sea kayaking, you were on the ocean in a little tiny boat. A lot of the skiing that I was doing was on, sort of steep, dangerous slopes. And she just couldn't comprehend why anybody would want to put themselves into that situation. So what I ended up doing was sort of, the risk assessment matrix was a common conversation in our family. And what I would often do with Susan was, sort of try and make what I was doing sound a lot less risky by sort of downplaying it. And, I was like, yeah, we're going kayaking on the ocean in Maine, but we're not going to go if it's super windy, or everywhere we go, it's going to be in a protected area. But, it just kind of bounced off her. No matter what I said, she just couldn't figure out why anybody would take these sort of risks. And it was sort of part of our relationship. We had a good sense of humor, Susan and I. We're very different. I think we appreciated the differences between each other. And there was humor involved in this particular issue that we had, but it was getting kind of old for her, that I seemed to always be going out and doing something that I really wasn't supposed to have been doing. A lot of times the kids were with me too, So, but to me it wasn't like a big deal, but to Susan it seemed like a big deal. So as time went by, I didn't lie. but I didn't really tell her the whole truth. It's like, well, we're not going to go anyplace windy. We'll always be in a safe place kayaking, or if we're skiing, well, we're just going to ski on the easy trails, And this one particular time, at this point in my life, the boys had become more independent, and so I was getting more time to be able to go out and do this sort of activity. And one of the things that I did every year was go out, usually to Utah, with a group of friends, and we would ski. And we would spend a few days in the resort, and then we would do a backcountry day, and then we would go back to the resort for a couple more days. One particular year, I think it was 2005, there had been a rain event early in the year, and it had created an ice layer throughout the entire Rocky Mountain Range in North America and up into British Columbia. And there had been, unfortunately, a lot of deaths from avalanche that year. And it was totally in the news. I mean, Peter Jennings was talking about, snow science and avalanche danger and backcountry skiing. And a lot of the deaths had been people who were backcountry skiing. And so when we were getting ready to go on our trip out to Utah, Susan came to me and she said, well, of course you're not going to go backcountry skiing, because it's way too dangerous this year. And I said something to the effect of, well, I'll talk to the guides, but I assume, we're not going to go skiing. And all my wife heard was, Larry told me he wasn't going to go backcountry skiing. And so went out to Utah, skied for a few days in the resort, and went up to the parking lot behind Alta on a backcountry day and met our guide, Anya from New Zealand. And we were doing our equipment review, the beacons, the probes, the shovels. Everybody had to have all this gear. Everybody had to know how to use their beacon. Before we went on the trip, I had called the guiding service, and they had assured me that we were not going to be doing anything risky, that we were doing a very low angle backcountry trip, and that none of the areas that we'd ever been to had any avalanche history ever. And so we were very comforted, and felt safe. So when we met with Anya, while we were talking to her, a news van pulled up. And it was from a local Salt Lake City TV station. And 3 reporters got out, and they asked if they could interview us because we were the only group in the whole Salt Lake City area that was still going backcountry skiing. Everyone else had canceled their trip. Because they listened to their wives. And so, they asked a bunch of questions, and I have a big mouth, so I couldn't keep my mouth shut, and said something to the effect of that, if you really don't understand avalanche science and have a lot of experience, to go into the backcountry without a guide was really crazy. Another thing I said was, unfortunately, a lot of these accidents are caused by young men who have a severe case of testosterone poisoning. And as we were heading off up Mount Superior, out of Little Cottonwood Canyon in Utah, one of the reporters was like, I need a name, what's your name? You, he pointed at me. You said some interesting stuff. What's your name? And I was like, I don't know. I'm sure the families that, are dealing with the tragedies like this are not going to want to hear this kind of thing. I'd really rather not have my name in the paper. And of course, my buddy was like, his name is Larry Guile. He's from Amherst, Massachusetts. Whatever, we didn't think about it that much. And we skied off. I had a wonderful day. Just couldn't have been any better. Very memorable, a lot of great runs, and an all-day trip. It was a really, really fantastic backcountry day. And that was Saturday, and the next day was Sunday. And I figured I'd check in at home in the morning, and I called home at the time when the family was supposed to be hanging out reading the paper and having breakfast. And they really were very consistent about this. And nobody picked up the phone. So it was like, well, that's pretty good. So I called back, and this was back before cell phones and all that stuff. So it's like, when the phone rang at the house, you answer it, because they might not call back or whatever, And so, again, no answer. I call back a third time, and my 11-year-old son picks up the phone, and he says, "Dad, you are busted. You were on the cover of the New York Times, going backcountry skiing. And I told Mom you wouldn't." One of the reports from the New York Times. Anyway, thank you.
So as a reminder, Carrie, this is a good time to set up the refreshments.
Thank you.
So a relationship that got you in trouble or vice versa. This is another one where I can't wait. I would love to hear the rest of the story. My dalliance with a bird. That's all I got. Would you like to hear more? Okay, a few things. Every year, the Valley Players Theater, which is where you are right now, we host a playwright award. And we read anywhere from 4 to 12 plays that are written by playwrights in Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. And a group of readers decides the best one and if it's worthy of our prize. And in 2023, a play called The Poet's Choice won, and we put that on our stage in February of 2024. Well, all the people that were involved with it loved the play, but they had some feedback for the playwright, which is one of the great things about producing new plays, especially if you have a relationship with the playwright. You can give some feedback, and you can make changes on the fly. Well, we sent it back to her with some suggestions, and she's rewritten it, Mary Pratt. And we are going to, in 2 weeks, a little less than 2 weeks, Friday, April 18th, 7:30, right here, we are going to do a staged reading. So the original set will be here, but I'm not going to make people memorize their lines again. We're going to do a couple of rehearsals with a new script and show you the Poet's Choice Redux. And we're no charge, just come on in. If you're interested in seeing new works, we'll take donations at the door if you are interested and willing. Speaking of donations, we've got some refreshments for you. They'll be out in the lobby, and any donations that you give in that little box will go to the Interfaith Council, who provided all the goodies, and among other things, they support the Mad River Valley Community Pantry. So we'll take 12 minutes. Is that enough time? 12 minutes? And we'll see you right back here. All right, enjoy.
Welcome back. Next up, we have New Old Friends by Marci Robinson of Warren. The relationships that make her laugh the most would be the ones she shares with Katie, Charlotte, and Susan. That's me. I didn't pay her to say that. That wouldn't much. But Charlotte did, and I think we all suspected that. They share a common sense of humor and appreciation for appropriate sarcasm. We're doing it now, aren't we, Charlotte? Yeah, nailing it. She wants to thank all who support live performances of the arts in the community. You are what makes this a special place. Please welcome Marci. That's the sarcasm that you know and love. Not so much. When? You gotta tell the mic when. Righty tighty. Righty tighty. Thank you.
Okay. There's all kinds of songs about friends, right? Got friends in low places. I'm here to be a friend. You got a friend in me. There's one also by country singer Luke Bryan that has a verse. You never get a second chance to make new old friends. Well, I understand the sentiment. I don't necessarily agree. Growing up, obviously, I had plenty of friends, although I did grow up in a very conservative religious household, so that shaped the relationships that I had growing up. Most of my friends were from either our congregation or my extended family. My mom was one of 10 kids, my dad one of 3, so there was a lot of family to go around. Family events were always full of laughter, games, and plenty of food. So, and I even have 2 cousins who are still some of my closest friends. I did go to public school, but most of my relationships with my classmates were limited to school hours. You know, there was not a lot of socializing, after school friendships, or extracurricular activities. I did have a lot of friends that I was close to that were my age in our congregation, and that was great. My mom always encouraged that and made sure that our house was always open to all those friends, and so I was able to have a good time growing up. And even to the point when in my 20s, some of us would travel to international Bible conventions to Greece and to Russia, so that was very interesting. But because that was an all kind of consuming activity, I don't really understand some of the experiences and things that I was missing. That was until we had a baby, Katie, and as she started growing up. So fast forward to when she was in 6th grade, and she decided that she was wanting to take a different path than us, and we were as supportive as we could be of her. So, you know, she had lots of friends both in and out of the classroom, involved in a lot of extracurricular activities, most notable music and theater, which she did from elementary school all the way up through high school. And I enjoyed that too, because I got to be backstage, helping with lines, creating costumes, making props, helping with hair and music, and enjoying that community and seeing actually the lifelong friends that she was making. Then as kids do, they grow up. And she went to college and moved out, so I lost that connection. And I was like, well, you know, maybe I'll just have to join the theater myself now that everybody else is gone. That's just a joke. And around the same time, my husband and I also were starting to step away from our religious beliefs. And since that circle of friends was primarily faith-based, that also meant having lost that connection too. So I found myself at an age thinking, how do you make new friends when you're an adult? Well, as I said, joining the theater was a joke, but the more I thought about it, I thought, maybe I could. Then in 2019, the Valley Players announced their 40th anniversary season. And the first show that they were going to be doing was Harvey, which was a revival of the very first show they'd done 40 years ago. That film version with Jimmy Stewart was something that my mother and I, among many other old movies, would spend hours on the weekends watching. At this point, she had passed away, and so the idea of doing this really was something that appealed to me. Then I heard the promos for auditions from Doug and Ruth Ann saying, if you've never acted before, come on down. If you're scared to death and you have no idea what you're doing, come on down. That was me. I talked myself in and out of it several times. Finally, I decided, okay, I'm gonna do this, but I told absolutely no one. My plan was that I was going to just skip my Monday pottery class so nobody was be wondering where I was. So I drove from work in Montpelier here to the theater. My heart was just pounding so hard. On the radio, Darius Rucker sang, "When's the last time you did something for the first time?" And I yelled out, "Now, right now, now!" And as I get here, I park, I walk in, and instead of my anxiety getting heightened, it slowed down. My heartbeat, I could feel relaxing, and there was a genuine feeling of home when I was here that I can remember the feeling to this day. I knew nobody who was here. I signed up to audition. I read everything that they asked me to, even for other shows that I wasn't auditioning for that were going to be later in the season. To my great delight, I was cast in Harvey with 2 small parts. After that, yep, I was hooked. And everyone said, well, we're never going to let you go now. And I was like, that's okay. I was hooked on the idea of learning lines, learning what Hell Week really was, Tech Week, the joy of getting the part that you really wanted. Likewise, the fellow commiserations when you didn't. The excitement of what happens down in the green room after a great show, knowing that whatever happens in the green room stays in the green room. I was meeting new people with each consecutive production, and I loved it. To say that this group of people has changed my life is not an exaggeration. I was now meeting people. I had learning things about myself, even to the point of kind of delving out into other things like improv, stand-up, and finding out that I actually love the stage. So during COVID, of course, you know, some of our live performances were, obviously the live performances were shut down, but we still kept in touch over Zoom. And then there was a small group who kind of formed their own social bubble that they could keep in touch, and they had weekly dinners. And then ultimately things changed and you know, things were more open. So, and then my husband and I were added to that group, and so we've really got to know people. And I've learned in this not to take myself too seriously, to let go of the fear and embrace the fun, and to be happy with who I am. And that's what this group of people has taught me, that I can be myself. Oh, and we've also gone international travel. Caribbean cruises, a villa in Italy, and in February, Mardi Gras to celebrate my 60th birthday. It was amazing. So I would sometimes say I feel like a different person, but that's not really true. I am the same person, but I am now able to feel like my true self that I've always been deep down. I have a core group of friends who accept me for who I am without judgment. I don't have the feeling that I have to try and be someone that someone else wants me to be. And my range of friends are from a wide variety of ages, backgrounds, and identities. And so, even though I've only known most of these people for a 10th of my life, I do think that they really count with the way they've affected my heart as new old friends. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
Do you have a hanky?
Makes me so happy. a copy of Chicken Fat. I did want to say, I meant to say this at intermission. So at the point where Charlotte was telling her story of stepping on the beehive, I don't know if any of you noticed, but a wasp landed on her shoulder. And stayed with her through the whole thing, and she was freaking out. She came backstage like, "Ah!"
But it was on my leg then.
Yes, it had migrated. And who knows where it had been in between.
I know.
Okay. Call and Response by Danielle, Dukette. The relationships that have brought her the most laughs are those with her children. They get each other's humor in a way she hasn't found with anyone else. Their motto, it's all fun and games until someone gets hurt. Then it's hilarious. Everybody stand back. Here comes Danielle.
Marco. Polo. Marco. Polo. When we become parents, we expect to give to our children. We give them our culture, we give them our love, we give them our discipline. We basically give them our hearts. And what do? They grow up, they take our hearts, and they move away. We're a hunting family, and that's a heritage I passed on to my children, especially my eldest son, Dave. Many, many times we spent in the woods hunting, me supporting him and teaching him as he got his first deer, and then his second and his third. And then he grew up and he moved to Oregon, across the country. Our hunting days were over, or at least a lot farther and fewer between. So, at the start of last season, I knew I'd be hunting alone. I called him the night before opening day, and we talked about where I'd be hunting the next morning. He sent me screenshots of wind speed and wind direction and temperature from his app. I thought, how cute. I taught him everything he knew. Here he was, trying to help me. Oh, that was very sweet. So the next morning at 5 a.m., after checking wind speed and direction, which of course were exactly what David had shared with me the night before, I found myself in the cold and in the dark, huddled at the base of a white birch tree, waiting for the morning. One of the nicest things about hunting is sitting in the dark as the sun starts to come up, seeing these dark shapes become a boulder, or a grayish shape become a pile of brush from a logging operation years before, hearing the night sounds of owls and the rustling of leaves transition to the flutter of bird wings and the twitter of birds as they land on branches right beside your head. When you sit hunting still, the birds will be so close to you that you can see every detail of their feathers. You can see them clean their big beaks on a twig or catch a bug. Then as the sun comes fully out, the birds take off to spend their day, and I'm left alone in the woods. In my boredom, I take a picture of my view of the field and text it to Dave, even though I know he's sound asleep. I sit for about 3.5 hours before my frozen toes and my full bladder force me out of the woods. When I get home and get warmed up, I FaceTime Dave. He's just having breakfast. And we talk about my hunt, and I tell him where I'm going to be walking that afternoon for midday hunt. He sends me a screenshot of a map with X's marked on it of where he thinks there's going to be deer at that time of day. And I thought, oh, that's so cute. Isn't that cute? No. I mean, clearly I'm capable of hunting on my own, but no, it's so sweet. So, of course, to indulge him, I go walking to where he suggests, and sure enough, jump to doe right in the first spot he marked on that map. I take a couple pictures of their bed where I jumped them from, and on my trek back up into the field that afternoon, text them to Dave, and he says, "Which way did they run, Mom?" And I told him, and he's like, "Oh, they're gonna be headed your direction." I'm thinking, right. They're over half a mile on the ridgeline away. They're not coming this way. But I respond enthusiastically, like, "Oh, that's sweet." And go and hunker down by that white birch tree, send him a picture of the view of the field, to which he responds with a thumbs up emoji. And I'm sitting there, and it's peaceful and calm, and the sun is on my face. I hear the staccato of the woodpeckers. I hear the twittering of the chickadees, and the crunch, crunch, crunch of footsteps coming up the trail I used to access the field. I think, ah, crap. Another hunter is gonna come up and spoil my hunt. So I crane my neck around, trying to catch sight of them so I can signal where I am and hope that they will be gracious enough to go somewhere else. But what do I see? But 2 doe walking up the trail. I thought, oh my gosh, this is crazy. One of them goes past and into a stand of trees and into the field. The other one stops 40 yards from me and he's chewing on a stick where a buck had left a scent. It was fascinating. I wanted to get my phone out and take a video so I could share it with Dave later. But I knew she'd see me and there's no way I could move. So I was just captivated and tried to catalog every detail. Before I could register the change, suddenly she's running straight at me and veers at the last moment into the field. And right on her heels is a buck with his head lowered, his antlers right at me, coming straight for me. And luckily veering at the last second and stops dead. I have a full view of his rump and his heaving sides as he stands 8 feet away from me. David is gonna lose his mind when I tell him about this. Oh my God! He's scenting the air and grunting. I'd only ever heard that on the videos I used to watch with my kids. It was unbelievable. And then it hits me. The only thing between me and him is 8 feet of grass and weeds. I had to get my gun. So I reach my hands up, click off the safety. He doesn't even flinch. He can clearly see me, but he's just scenting the air and grunting. Nothing for it, I've got to try to get a shot. So very slowly, ever so slowly, I raise my rifle, get it nestled into my shoulder and look through the scope. I can't see a thing, it's all a blur. It's sighted for 75 yards, not 2. Crap. So I do what I taught my boys. I take a deep breath and I wait. And I breathe and I wait. And slowly he starts to walk away toward that stand of trees. I think, I'm not gonna get a shot. I watch as his rump gains clarity and definition in my scope. And I breathe. And then when he's about 50 yards away, he turns sideways. I can just make out the crease of his leg and his shoulder. I breathe. In and out, and I fire. I hope that my son kept the voicemail that I left for him, because I called, hyperventilating, oh my God, Dave, you've got to call me back, I just got my first buck. I'm standing there, adrenaline coursing through me, just awestruck. My phone vibrates in my hand, I look at it, it's Dave. I pick it up, oh my God, Dave, oh my God. Mom, you okay? What's going on? Dave, I think Mom, did you get it, dear? Did you get it, Mom? I saw him, can you see him, Mom? This goes on like this until I calm down enough to switch to FaceTime, and I show him where I was sitting and where the buck had stopped. I show him where the buck lay. I show him where the 2 doe were still standing out in the field eating nonchalantly with a care in the world 100 yards away. I shared every detail with him asking questions, and we revisited every moment. Later that night, after I'd taken care of the deer and lay in bed, I was just in awe. I had shared that entire hunt with him. He had shared in it with me. It wasn't unidirectional. I had called and he had responded. My heart was full. Marco. Oh.
Gosh, people. Kids are so sweet, aren't they? Okay. Next up, we have My Precious Jewels by Wendy Freudlich of Middlesex. For the relationship with the most laughs, she said both of her parents were extremely silly people. There was a period where they were having some marital difficulties and they named their fights. I like this idea. One was called the overboard, when her mom got out of the car and walked 3 miles home. Another was called the salad bowl. when she dumped a salad over her dad's head and he poured a jug of milk over her head. They were married 30 years. Isn't that cute? Wendy's a former redhead, love that, and a self-proclaimed funologist. She loves sharing love, laughter, and silliness through stories and improv comedy. Give it up for Wendy!
So, I knew that when I went to Montreal a few months ago with my 21-year-old daughter, I knew I should have left Grandma's ring home for safekeeping. I was really, really looking forward to this weekend with my daughter. We had been estranged for 3 years when she was in high school. She got mad at me and went to live with her dad and didn't talk to me for 3 years. But we'd been working on our relationship and things were much, much better. So we'd been planning this trip to Montreal for a while. We were gonna take the bus up, excuse me, from Montpelier, stay at a hotel, go to a nice spa, go out to dinner, and just tool around Montreal. So it was a Saturday morning, it was freezing cold. The bus to Montreal was late getting to Montpelier for about a half an hour, but we finally got on the bus. It was packed, crowded, and our seats were all the way at the very, very back of the bus in front of the toilet. Now, Anna was just a little bit prickly, so I summoned all of my Wendy mama patience that I had, and we both just plugged in our earbuds for the first half hour or so of the trip. And then we took them out and we relaxed and we basically chatted the rest of the 2 hours up until Montreal. So we get to Montreal, we get off the bus, we walk in the frigid, blowing, freezing cold to the metro, get on the metro, get off the metro, walk to our hotel. We were able to check in early and grab a little bite, and then we walked another 20 minutes down to the spa in the freezing cold. And it was a Friday evening, so the spa was packed. And we checked in with the attendant, we got our wristbands, and we went downstairs to the locker room, which was also packed. Now, my locker was the top locker, and Anna's was the locker next to me. So we took off our clothes and we put on our robes. And I had brought a special little cloth bag with me to put my jewelry in. So I took off my earrings and my bracelet and my rings, and I put them in this little cloth bag, put them in my locker, and shut the locker. And Anna and I went and we did the sauna, and we had a massage, and we did a steam bath. And we just tootled around the spa for a few hours, and we're finally ready to go grab some dinner. So we both headed into the shower, and I got out first, and I went to my locker, excuse me, and I opened my locker. Anna was still taking a shower, and I took that little cloth bag. I don't even think I had put my clothes on yet. I took the little cloth bag and I took out my earrings, and I put my earrings in, and I put on my bracelet, and I put one ring on, and then all of a sudden I heard a ding, and my grandmother's ring had dropped out of the bag. Now, my grandmother had passed away when I was a sophomore or a freshman in college. I was the first granddaughter, and I had a very special relationship with my grandma. When my grandmother died, my mom wore my grandmother's wedding ring on her finger. And my mom passed away, about 2 years ago. And so since my mom passed away, I've worn that ring on my finger. And when I'm gone, the ring will go to Anna. So it's a very sentimental ring that has passed down from mother to daughter. So Anna wasn't back from the shower yet. I looked for the ring. I looked on the floor. I pulled up the rug underneath. It wasn't under the rug. I looked in my boots. I looked in Anna's boots. I looked in all the boots around us. And I did that whole same thing 3 or 4 times. No ring. There was a pipe next to the locker. No ring. Anna comes back. I'm distressed. She helps me, and we go around and around. No ring. Finally, a little voice says, "Oh, you heard a ding. The ring must have fallen from that little bag through the crack in the locker below you, and it must be just right on the top of the clothes in that locker." So Anna and I go back upstairs to the attendant, explain what happened. She happily comes downstairs with us, opens the locker below, no ring. Now, she's not allowed to go and sort through this person's belongings. So I take a deep breath and I ask her if she wouldn't mind to get me a pen and a piece of paper, and I'm just going to write a note to whoever's locker it is, explain what happened, and put my contact information down. So she does that. I write the note. I leave it on the top of the locker, close the locker. Anna and I decide we're hungry, it's 8 o'clock, we're gonna go grab some dinner. I take a deep breath and I'm just trying really, really hard to just let it go, because I just want to have a lovely weekend with my daughter. So we walk up, again, it's freezing cold. We walk, we find a restaurant, and we sit down, and I have a couple glasses of wine, Anna has a cocktail. We have a fairly nice dinner, chatting away, but again, in the back of my mind, I just am so bummed out, and I just can't let it go. So we finish dinner, and we walk up to our hotel. It's about 10 o'clock at night, and we get in our PJs, and I'm just bummed, and I'm just trying to not show it, but I'm bummed. When all of a sudden, the phone rings, my phone rings, and I pick up the phone, and it's the woman whose locker is underneath me. And she says, "I'm the woman, my locker, I read your note, and I'm so sorry, but I didn't find your ring." And I thank her, and I say, "Okay," and I just take a deep breath, and I'm like, "Okay." And then all of a sudden, a little birdie whispers in my ear, "Go check your boots again." Now, I had been wearing these calf-length boots, and between the laces and the boot was like a tongue. And so I walked over to where the boots were in the hotel room, and I separated the tongue from the laces, and I peeked down, and there was Grandma's ring. And I took a nice deep breath, and I realized there was not going to be any distraction, that I can now spend a really lovely mother-daughter weekend with my daughter Anna. The ring had been found, and so had my relationship with my daughter.
How we all doing? Good? Good. Just getting ready for something. You don't need to know. But you'll find out. Okay. Starting a new relationship. Again. Carrie Youngblood of Montpelier. Her relationship with the most laughs, she keeps thinking of everyone in her immediate family. The in-jokes, shared experiences she has with her 2 sisters, they're precious to her and only hilarious amongst themselves. I'm sure many of you can relate to that. The bond she has with her 2 children, since they get each other, are equally mysterious and equally fun to anticipate and enjoy. For our next storyteller, please welcome Carrie.
In the spring of 2006, my soon-to-be ex-husband had been out of my house for nearly a year. I was in my mid-40s, and my counselor and I had decided that it was time for me to go out and find my next relationship. So I signed up for Match.com, and I answered some questions about myself and answered some questions about who I was looking for. And I added some pretty good pictures of myself that were fairly recent. I wrote a little essay about how I was interested in history, and I was interested in history, and I was active in my church, and I'd been a contestant on Jeopardy! But that's another story. So, to perform a search on Match, you type a zip code into the search box and set a search radius. And I set it for 50 miles from my home in Montpelier. And when you get results that you're interested in, you start by winking at them. And then there's an in-app messenger, and then you go to exchange emails and phone calls, and then you set up your first in-person date. Well, I did a lot of dating. My very first date was with a doctor whose coworkers had signed him up for Match and written his profile for him. And either he really wasn't ready to get out into the whole dating scene, or I way overshared for a first date. But I never heard from him again. One of the things I discovered that's a good place for a first date are the Vermont Mountaineers baseball games. They're out in public. They're not very expensive. There's a lot of downtime in baseball where you can chat and get to know one another. And if you run out of things to talk about, well, hey, you can always watch the game. Of course, some dates went on farther than just the first date. There was Marvin, who had never been married. And by the time of our third or fourth date, when he spent most of the time telling me what was wrong with me, I'm looking at him thinking, I can see why you've never been married. And then there was Tom from the other side of Lake Champlain, who was very exciting and impulsive and the total opposite of my ex. But when he told me that he loved me on our first date, and he referred to me as his fiance on our second date, and took me to meet his adult children on our third date, I'm like, back off, buddy. Then there was Jerry, who was also interested in history, very calm and quiet, and a really good cook. I was just crazy about him. But I think he decided that I was a little too much for him, and told me that he was going to drop out of the dating scene for a while and don't give up on my Match subscription. And then there was Gilman. And Gilman lived in the New York City area, and he'd spent 30 years working the night shift on the Long Island Railroad. And his wife had moved out, and he was looking to retire in another year, and he wanted to leave the heat and humidity of Long Island and retire up to New England. Well, the women he was meeting in New York were all going to move down south when they retired, so he realized that he should meet some women who already lived in New England. And he found a very nice lady in Camden, Maine, but soon realized that the real estate prices on the coast of Maine were way out of his retirement budget. So he'd always liked New Hampshire, particularly Lake Winnipesaukee, and always went to a steamboat meet on Lake Winnipesaukee every year. And steamboats are going to have to wait for a story prompt of weird things you didn't know were hobbies. But anyway, he found a postcard for the steamboat meet and typed in the zip code for Moultonborough, New Hampshire, and sets his search radius for 100 miles. Well, he finds some nice ladies in New Hampshire, And since Montpelier is 97 miles away from Moultonborough, which is on the northwestern part of Lake Winnipesaukee, he finds me. So he winks, and we message, and we exchange the emails, and then it comes time for the phone call. And I don't know about you, but a phone call with me goes like, hello? I'll be there at 10:30. Bye. And I hang up. Now, when Gilman got on the phone, it was, how's your life? What are you doing? What are you thinking about? And we hang out on the phone until 45 minutes later, your cell phone battery dies. So by the end of this call, I was wondering what was up with this guy who would not let me hang up, and he thought I was just rude. Okay, now we are in the middle of September, and it's time for him to come to Moultonborough for the next steamboat meet. Well, that was also the same weekend as the Bethany Church yard sale. And if you remember the Bethany Church yard sale, it is a very big deal. And I was going to be in Montpelier working the yard sale that weekend. So he's making arrangements to come up and meet up with some of the women he's found in the search for New Hampshire. And if he wants to meet me, he's going to have to come to Montpelier because I'm going to be at Bethany Church. So he's planning this trip, and the week before he comes up, he's on the night shift with one of his coworkers, and they pull out a big sheet of paper and they write down the name of all the ladies that he's interested in, and then makes check marks for all their good points, and totals everything up at the bottom. And I got the lowest score on the chart. So, comes up to New Hampshire, and he has his first date with a lady in New Hampshire, and it is an absolute disaster. Total washout. And so now he's wondering if he wants to get in the car and drive 97 miles to Montpelier to meet this woman, and he really doesn't think it's going to work out. But he figures he might as well. So we agreed that we would meet at Bethany Church, and that I would be out in the yard working the yard sale, and I'd save him a parking space. So he drives up to the church. I'm standing there in a parking space. I give him a big smile, and for him, it was love at first sight. My two kids and Vermont and my church and the chart and the phone call totally out the window. Lightning had struck. 59 years old, and he is head over heels in love. Well, I thought he was very nice and all of that. Lightning had not struck me. But over the course of the next couple of months, I realized I had pretty much found what I was going to find on Match. And over the next 12 months, I went down to visit him in New York, and he came to visit me in Vermont. And I discovered it's really very endearing to be the person on whom the sun rises and sets. And I grew to appreciate some of his really good qualities. So, our last date in New York was the Greenwich Village Halloween costume parade, and the next day he moves up to Montpelier to be with me. And a year later, we were married. So that's how two middle-aged people went online and found their next relationship. And we've been married for 16 years. Aww. And over the course of the years, we've come to realize that Moultonborough is in the far northwestern part of Lake Winnipesaukee. Now, if that steamboat meet had been on any other part of the lake, Montpelier wouldn't have been in a 100-mile search radius, and we might never have met at all.
Whatever. I mean, wasn't that great? Friend. Now that's my kind of love. By Dennis McSorley of Burlington. You may have seen Dennis on stage in Burlington, and we're pleased to have him in the Mad River Valley. Relationship with the most laughs? I love this for you, Dennis. The one he has with himself. I love that, Dennis. He's really had a great deal of fun and many laughs getting used to himself. It's taken him some time, and he always has to remind himself to not take himself so seriously. Please welcome Dennis.
It's okay. Yeah, I got it. I'm good. This is an actual New York accent, so don't be alarmed. I'm a flatlander. I lived here all my life, and my marriage is falling apart. My job was a little stressful, and I got mugged twice. So I took a leave and came to Burlington. And I was here for about a year, and I made some friends. I joined a recovery community, and I went back to New York and realized I didn't like it there anymore, and I didn't belong there anymore. There was no reason to be there, so I came back here. And I had made some friends, and then I returned. I got into theater. I had a job and a community theater, and I'd meet a lot of people on Church Street. And I knew this one guy, and he had a woman with him, and she would laugh, and I would run lines with them, and we got to have a good time. And then I saw her a few times, and he wasn't there. And I said, "What happened?" She said, "They broke up." So right away, I went, "Well, why don't we go to a show together?" And stuff. So we did. Turns out she was from Pennsylvania, and the reason she was here was because she was in a really horrible automobile accident. The jaws of life had to get her out in Pennsylvania in the rain. And she had 15 surgeries, and her daughter was a student up here at UVM and said, "Mom, come up here and you can recuperate." This had happened before we met. And so we start to date. It turns into a romantic relationship. I have my own place. And then her daughter graduates, and by the way, her dog died in the car accident. Oh. It was a Burmese mountain dog. Oh. So we're in this apartment where her and her daughter were, and the daughter graduates. I'm coming over for visits, and we think this is a serious relationship. Why don't we just be together? We don't have to get married. We already had been. She was a widow, actually, and she had children who were adults, and I had a son who was also grown up back in New York. So we do that. We start to hang out together. We get a place together over in Winooski, and it's gone over a year or so now. We're doing all right. We're having a good time. And I said, have you ever thought about maybe getting a dog again? And she's like, well, I don't know. I said, they say it's a good thing to do. I had a dog as family in New York. It was a boxer that would jump up and lick your face, and nobody ever trained it. It was just a maniac, fun dog for the family. We'd be able to lock her up and we got company. So I had that, and she said, well, all right. So we talk about different kinds of dogs. We don't want a little dog. We don't want a big dog. So we settle on Spaniels. So I'm looking at the papers. This is in the last century, by the way, before Y2K. All right, and so it's in the 90s somewhere, the 1990s, and I don't let that be. So there's an ad in the paper. Remember ads in the paper. It says pets, and it says AKC Cocker Spaniel puppies, Eden, Vermont. We drive up. There are 3 dogs left, the father, the mother, and 2 females and a male, and we just immediately, oh wow, give this guy the money and take the dog right away. He's the only male, and put him in the car in a cardboard box, and we drive home. Now, since I had never trained the dog back when I was a kid, I'm going to work hard and get Rusty, that's his new name, Rusty. He's a golden Cocker Spaniel. Of course, he's 2 months old. And I start to get VHS tapes and books and how do you train a dog. And I'm doing all this on the Winooski River where we're living in the mill yard. She's handling it too, but mostly it's me, and he's got the leash, and we're doing all this kind of good stuff. And I was having a good time with it. What happens with a lot of relationships is they change. And what happened was we decided that we weren't going to go in the same direction anymore. This is about 4 years or so together. So we're going to just divide, we're just going to leave each other and go our separate ways. And I said, well, what about Rusty? And she said, well, and I have a job where I have an overnight shift at a group home. And I said, could you take him on the nights I work the overnight? And she says, all right. Well, she does that for about 3 weeks, and then says, I can't do it anymore. It just brings up bad memories, meaning about us, just being together. So that's emotionally getting to her. So I said, all right. She says, and he's your dog, so there's no joint custody. I now have Rusty. And I have this job, and I'm like, what am I going to do with him when I'm at the overnight? So a person I work with says she'll take him on the changeover, the shift, and she did it for about 3 weeks or 3 weekends or so. And she said, she lived with a sister who had kids, and she said, I can't do it anymore because my sister's kids love the dog, and now they're bothering her to get it. And Rusty is so lovable. So now he's going to work with me, and before there were things called therapy dogs, Rusty's in the office running around like a maniac in this group home, and some of the folks who have schizophrenia and stuff are taking him for walks, and I'm trusting they'll come back. And they do. So I'm now got my own place, and Rusty's there, and I'm involved in a lot of projects, and I'm in a recovery community, and I'm doing a couple of community plays. I'm never home. I'd leave him in his little cage. He slept with me. He loved to run. And, he'd give me that look when I come in the door, like, I know you, but I wish you would die. Like, you just leave me here. I like to run around, and where are you? You're never here. And I could see it. I could see something was happening. And I thought, this is not fair anymore. So I go to Boudeliers on Pertrig, and I get an oak tag poster, and I make a poster, and I make it like a personal ad, because there is no computer. So I don't pee on the rug. I have a couple of pictures of him. I chase the ball every time they throw it. I sleep through the whole night. I'm trained. I'm allowed to laugh. So what do you think? I hang it up at doggy daycare. They said it's okay. About 3 weeks later, the phone rings. And this guy comes on the phone. I come see dog. And I go, okay, come see the dog. So I'm telling Rusty, this could be your ticket out, buddy. You better behave yourself, do a good job. I'm kidding. He and I are like, we're like this. And so this guy shows up where I live, and he's got a Mercedes SUV. He's a big guy. He's like 300 pounds, and he's got the Texant. And he gets out of the, and he's got another Cocker Spaniel in the SUV with him, who's black, all black dog. And I come out with Rusty. And he gets out of his SUV and he starts to cry. Aww. And he says, I have a dog just like this dog, who I had to put down, 11 years old. Look just like this dog, I take this dog. And I'm like, wow, oh my goodness. Meanwhile, Rusty and this black Cocker Spaniel running in this field where they live up and down like a shampoo commercial. They're going up and down. I'm watching this, and he says, I have to talk to wife and daughter, otherwise it's good. I take dog everywhere. We don't fly. We go on hotel. We go Grand Prix. We go Florida. The dog always goes with us. And he goes, and it's good for this dog, because the other dog is blind. So Rusty is actually a guide dog for a dog, and they're running together. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is like too good to be true in a way, but here it is. So the next day he comes back, he has his wife and his daughter, and he hands me like a couple $100, more than I bought Rusty for. And he says, I don't need toys, I do nothing, I get knee surgery for the back legs. He's telling me all these things, and I'm like, wow, Rusty, you hit the big time. And off they go. And so I'm sad. I miss him. So I go to visit him. They live in South Burlington. The guy's in construction or something. And he's got a huge house with a big round backyard pool. And I expected, I'm looking for Rusty, and she says, yeah, he's here someplace. And I'm thinking it's like Spud McKenzie. He's going to be in the pool with sunglasses on, with a Nerf ball going like, I don't even know you. And he comes around and he does see me, but he gives me a look and picks up a ball and runs off. And I knew it was kind of done. And it was my heart that was getting broken this time. And I realized that, relationships come, they go, you have so many in your life, you don't think about them. But I realized how important it was for Rusty to be with me for the reasons that we got him. Turned out it was supposed to be for her and her. It turned out that we all fell in love with him. And also, he had helped me during that hard time of a breakup with somebody I had been in love with in a relationship that wasn't going to finish. So that's what Rusty had done for my life. And, you know, dogs are just great, and he was a very special one for me. So thanks.
Exit right, Dennis. Well, that was the end of our storytelling evening. Pretty special, huh? You were a wonderful, wonderful audience. We'll have you back. Now, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So, have a great evening, everyone.
That must be Doug's favorite song.